for people. It's
Yeah.
so uncomfortable. And so there is a lot of people that are like, I'm
I
just going to
have
crack
this
a joke.
I have this belief that the number of people in your family, the ultimate goal is 2.5 kids.
Mm.
Uh, and I think it's because people can't stand the idea of grieving for more than five people.
That could be.
That's
Could be.
stupid, Scott. All right, Danny, you got us down. We'll bring us back. Hello again, everybody. It is Scott Casper. This is St. Gregory's Talk Therapy, the mental health show. Nick has the week off, sitting in his chair, the very able and positive. My goodness sake, she's positive. Buffy Peters of Hamilton's Grief Academy. And Buffy, welcome back.
Thank you.
All right, so we have these wonderful off-air conversations, and they're hard to recap. But one of the things that you mentioned was the child bereavement estimation model.
Yep.
Talk to us about what that is in brief.
Yes, it's a mouthful, but the
Mhm.
child bereavement estimation model is something that Judy's House, which is a grief center in Denver, Colorado, that they made. And basically what it does is it tells you, based on data of kids that they know that are grieving, how many kids by the time 18 rolls around, how many kids will be grieving the death of a parent or a sibling. And the national average is 1 in 14. So if you think about like kids in a classroom, that's at least 2 kids that have a parent or sibling that has died that's grieving. That does not count the grandparents, the aunts and uncles, the cousins, all these other people that are important in kids' life that have died. So we know that children's grief is a major issue.
It's huge.
Huge. And so I was very excited that we were able to have Saylee come because she is 1 in 14 and she is very much more than just a statistic.
Right.
She's a wonderful young lady. But I think it's really important to hear from that perspective too, as we can say, like, I can tell you what it was like for me as a 10-year-old, but again, that was a few years ago. And so I really wanted to talk to.
Well, we changed.
Yeah.
The
yeah.
situation's changed. The world is constantly changing. The National Children's Grief Awareness Month is going on right now. It's through the month of November, and yesterday was the actual day. But here to talk about that, her experience in it, is the very, well, she's just a wonderful girl. Her name is Saylee Sims. Good morning, Saylee. How are you?
Good morning. I'm good. How are you?
Good. Say good morning to Buffy as well.
Good morning, Buffy.
Hi, Saylee. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. It's good to hear your voice.
Yours too.
See, folks, you can hear it just around the edges. Very positive, very positive. You lost your father in 2003. How old were you?
I was about 1 when I lost him.
And when your father died at 1 year old, your grief, as we just mentioned, at 1 year old is going to look different today
Yes.
Than it did at 1 year old. And I'm going to ask Buffy. Buffy, go ahead, because
Yeah.
this is the conversation you have with so many folks.
Yep.
And it's part of the process of living.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and I've talked a lot with Saylee just about, how that changes over time, right? And
Right.
I wanted to talk a little first. Saylee, can you tell the listeners just a little bit about yourself? Because I think it's important to know, who are we talking to?
Sure.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, of course. So my name is Saylee Sims. I'm 17. I go to school, but I'm homeschooled, so I do everything at home. I play basketball and soccer. I love to be around my family. And
you have an awesome family, don't you?
Yes, they're pretty great.
Yes. So I actually work with Saylee's mom at Hamilton's Funeral Home. She runs our pet cremation division, or pet services. And she is fantastic. And then Saylee came on as a part-time person. So she helps out at funeral services, answering phones, all of that kind of stuff. And I've always been in awe of Saylee and her mom, Sunita's, the way that they continue to honor Saylee's dad. And it's just so cool to see a teenager so passionate about advocating for her parent who has died and not letting any stigma or shame get in the way of that. And I've already told Saylee that, so I just wanted to fill the listeners in. So tell us a little bit about your dad.
Yeah. So, from him passing away at such a young age, there's not a lot that like I remember of him, or like, um, being like us being together. I don't really remember that. But I do have family, of course, that tells me all these memories. So, he was a very funny guy. Loved to dance, loved to ski. Loved me, of course. So that's just, I mean, those memories, I guess,
Yeah.
of him. That's just what I, will cherish forever, I guess. But
Yeah.
Er,
Well, oh, go ahead.
Just a quick follow up. Early, well, let's say 2003, 2004, and then beyond. Does it get easier? And should people expect it to get easy?
I would say it definitely does get easier. I mean, there's some days where it's really it. I mean, I guess it would. Yes, it gets easier, but you're still gonna have days that are like,
Hmm.
um, you miss him, and some days are just always harder than others,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah. Well, and it changes over time, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so, especially you being so young when your dad died, your memories are what people have told you. So
Yes.
you're kind of living that way vicariously through their memories. And so that has its own kind of thing with it too. And I
Mhm.
think it's important for the listeners to know that your dad died from suicide. And
Yeah.
often that kind of death does hold a lot of stigma and shame.
Mhm.
And I'm
Mhm.
so glad that your family has been so open with you
Mhm.
about that, so that they've really taken that wall of stigma and shame down for you.
Mhm.
And again, that's why I'm so proud of you, how you advocate for him to keep
Mhm.
his memory alive and to not let that kind of stand in the way, because
Mhm.
we know that people who die from suicide, it is because 90% have some sort of underlying mental health
Right.
condition.
Right.
Mhm.
It's not like it's a rational choice. It's not like it's something they want to do to their family. It's because they have so much emotional pain
Hmm.
that they're trying to end that pain and not their life. And
Mhm.
so I think that that's what's really important for people to know. And actually, when this episode airs on Saturday, it is the International Suicide Survivors
Wow.
Day.
Wow.
So it
Wow.
was perfect when we thought about talking with Saylee and honoring
Yeah.
her dad, just to do it on that day. And if
Mhm.
you're interested in that now, if you're listening to the 10 o'clock recording,
Yeah.
it has started, but there's an afternoon session. So just Google it, and there's lots of ones happening online. They're all happening online. So again, that was the International Suicide Survivors Day is Saturday. And so definitely take a look at that, because
Mhm.
that's really important. So speaking of what Scott was kind of trying to allude to Saley,
Mhm.
let's talk about, how does your grief look now as a 17-year-old?
Wow. Yeah.
How
Mhm.
does it look today? Not today, but today. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Now.
Now.
So, my grief sometimes is, I take it out on anger. Sometimes I'm angry at him, for leaving. Like, oh, that was such a selfish act. But then I just had to put myself in like his shoes and like think like, he was in pain and he just wanted the pain to end. And so I kind of just sometimes, I cry a lot, and that's okay. That's just, we're humans, and that's just how sometimes we grieve. Everyone grieves different, but um, from being so young when he passed, I don't really remember how grief was back then.
Hmm.
But now it's definitely, I cry a lot. I sometimes I'm angry too at him. It's just kind of what
I
it
cry
is.
too, hey,
Mhm.
Saley. I do.
Yeah.
And that's perfectly
Mhm.
fine
Right.
to express your emotion
Mhm. Mhm.
at that time. When people ask you about your father,
Mhm.
what do you say?
No, I'm super open about it. I just tell them, my father passed away when I was young.
Hmm.
depending on where the conversation is, I will tell them, how he passed away and, how it is, growing up and like, growing up without a dad. Um, so yeah, it kind of just really depends.
Deep grief, Elizabeth Gilbert said it, deep grief sometimes is almost like a very specific location, a coordinate, if you will, on a map of time. So when you're standing in the forest of sorrow, which we all do, okay? The forest of sorrow, whether you know it or not, you're either on the edge of it, in the middle of it, or coming out the other side, okay? But if someone can assure you that they themselves have stood in that very same spot and now moved on, sometimes that alone brings hope. But it's that shared experience, and that's part of the purpose of this show is to have that conversation. Danny Bishop gets something out of each and every program that we do.
Oh, yeah.
And Danny, this is so common because, again, it's something we all deal with. So, large families. I can't imagine being a member of a large family. But,
Well, this is really surprising to me. My grandfather took his life. He was closer to the end of his life.
Yeah.
And I really wish I'd had somebody like you, Saylee, to sit next to me at the funeral and explain to me,
Yeah.
it was his pain. And how could I be so selfish as to ask him to spend one more day in this world? So I really wish I'd had somebody like you to help me through that.
That's powerful. Powerful. Our guest, Haley, I keep saying Haley. Is that common? People want to call
That
her
is
Haley?
so common. It's so common. Saylee, Bailey. Oh, I meant Haley, Bailey. Yeah.
Well, you don't want to hear what people confuse my name with. But Saylee Sims is our guest online, but in studio is Buffy Peters. She's the director of Hamilton's Grief Academy. I should say the president, because she really is doing a great job of guiding the ship. And sometimes the waters are murky, sometimes they're choppy, and sometimes it's a downright huge storm that we have to experience. And sorrow, grief, and dealing with it is such a challenge. It truly is. We're going to ask you to stand by because we're going to take a quick time out, pay some bills. We'll be back on the other side. Our conversation will continue. Childrengrieve.org, childrengrieve.org, a great site to check out. It'll be listed on our resources page as well. But do me a favor, stand by. We'll be back. There's more after this on Hope 940. It's St. Gregory's Talk Therapy, the mental health show. Stay tuned.
You are a rock star, Saylee.
I know, right?
Oh, thanks.
And by the way, we happen to be streaming. I sent you the address, Scott.
Oh,
We're as a test for the next show. We're streaming, and we're on YouTube. And I sent you the link via your email. And I'm saving this segment. We'll be back with the next one, which will be about 12 minutes and 15 seconds.
Perfect. So, Saylee, I'm going to talk about in the next one, too, like how you guys honor your dad. Will be part of that. So,
Okay.
I know you've got your... Oh, look.
that's a nice look.
Wave at the cameras because we are actually live on YouTube.
Awesome. Hi, YouTubers.
Hi, YouTubers.
Listen, the last time I was live on YouTube, we got a donation to the Academy for
wow.
books. So I'm just saying, if anybody wants to buy us some books, we have a beautiful lending library.
Hang on. Oh, it's a profit deal.
I got to do what I can.
It's a money-making opportunity. All right, so Danny, this is our last segment.
It is our last segment. In about 12 minutes and 15 seconds, we'll do this one. And it'll start whenever you're ready. You want to count? In 3, 2.
Give sorrow words. The grief that does not speak knits up the wrought heart, and it bids its break. William Shakespeare was trying to tell you in his Elizabethan terminology that if you speak, or there is power to speaking to something, right? Speaking to grief, not talking about it is where the damage occurs. Yep. My estimation, yours?
Yeah, I think a lot of people need to tell their stories. And that's the important thing, is that they're allowed to. But there's some people that if that doesn't work for you, don't feel like you have to go to a grief group and spill your guts out. Some people, that's super uncomfortable and that's not who they
It makes
are.
it worse.
Yeah, and so then that's why it's so important to know what resources are available. Do you want to talk one-on-one with a counselor? Do you want to write down your feelings in a journal? Do you want to go online and watch, TED Talks and YouTube videos? There's so many ways that you can feel I am not alone. Maybe it's reading a book. There's different ways that you can get that experience without having to put yourself in a position that just doesn't speak to who you are. But I do think telling your story is so important, especially in the beginning, to be able to do that. And I think as a society, we need to get better about being uncomfortable. And if a global pandemic doesn't teach us that we are all vulnerable, we need to be able to be uncomfortable. And that's how we can be able to sit with those that are hurting. We're all hurting in some sort of way. And so if we can be there and just sit and listen and not be afraid that I have to say the right thing to fix it, right?
Right.
There's nothing you can say to fix it. Like, just so you know, again, I try, but I don't even have the words. It's
No, but
being there.
you having an amazing ability to talk about it,
Yeah.
express yourself, and then relate because of your personal experiences, but seeing it daily, and then getting to see a bright, shining example of how positive or positivity can shine through. Saylee is, I think, a perfect example of that. Saylee Sims, our online guest. Saylee, welcome back. Tell me, how is it on certain days it pops up something, a sight, a smell, a taste, conversation, a movie, a card. It doesn't matter. There's certain things that will bring up that memory, and it begins anew. Does it do the same for you?
Yeah, most definitely. Some days are harder than others. And sometimes when you have that smell or that movie or I get it's you break down and that's okay. That's just me. When I see one of his pictures of us together or something like that, then it's just like, oh, I wish you were here, or
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think one of the cool things too, knowing Saylee personally, is seeing how she expresses herself on social media. And that's something that's very big with, I mean,
Mhm.
honestly, all of us right now. But to
Mhm.
be able to get that connection that she can say, hey, Dad, I'm missing you. I
Mhm.
wonder what it would be like if you were still here, kind of thing. She can really put that out there. And it's interesting because it's almost like you're putting it out to that person, even though you know that they can't see that.
Mhm.
But then to get that affirmation back from people like her mom, people that she works with, her friends saying, how proud he'd be of the girl she is today and wondering what that would be like. And so it's just so interesting to see that grief kind of turn that way too.
Mhm.
And for her to have that, way to express herself and get that validation from other people, I think is really important. And again, she is actively, and that's the part of grief that makes it helpful, is when we can be active in that grief and we're doing something about it. And she is honoring and she is showing people that she's proud of who her dad was,
Hmm.
regardless, right? Because we know that the moment of someone's death does not define their life. It doesn't.
That
And
makes
so,
sense, though, right?
yeah. And we think it does, especially those of us that are the survivors. That's what we're fiercely protective of, is that we don't want that moment of death to be the definition of their entire life. That's not. And so for Saylee to be able to do that, and I think that really talks to Saylee, what are the things that you do that you are really cognizant of continuing to honor your dad? What are those special things that you and your mom and your whole family, honestly,
Mhm.
do to honor him?
Yes. Every September we go on the suicide walk, and we just it's just really great to just be there and just feel him close to us. We at the suicide walk, we there's like a dove ceremony. They let doves go. You walk in memory of your loved one. You put flowers in the water for your loved one. So we do that every year. And on his birthday or death day, we go to Easter Lake where his ashes are spread, and we put a yellow rose in the water for him. And
Oh.
then we just, as a family, we just just are together, and that makes us feel like he's there with us. So that's really, we do that every year too.
Saylee Sims, our guest in the studio, is a great friend to the show and an outstanding resource for you folks. Did you ever think you'd become a resource?
I know.
And here you are, being a resource through Hamilton's Grief Academy. She's Buffy Peters. And Buffy, when I can't wait to see what the next topic is that you come up with. You're good. But we're talking about children and grieving, okay? And childrengrieve.org is a great resource tab for you folks. Check it out online as we come to you live this morning from the Five Talents Financial Management Studios. Nick Learhoff, I'm so upset that he's not here to have this conversation because this is so right up his alley.
Yep.
But I'm lucky, and I think you folks at home are as well, that we get to have this conversation because for so long we have allowed, we've made a conscious decision, most of it's conscious, I think, that if we don't talk about it, it really doesn't matter and it didn't happen, okay? Grief comes in many different forms. And I think you probably see the spectrum much more so than most people because you deal with it not only in your work, but in your life.
Yep.
So tell me, if a parent is having trouble with a child and they're noticing distinct changes in their behavior, their sleep patterns, their eating, and the parent comes to you saying, hey, we've got an issue. What can you do? How do you help these people?
We are getting more and more calls because of the pandemic, like more than ever before. And that's from adults and from about kids, because it is an increasingly difficult time. And the first thing that I do is I validate that of course they are struggling right now. I just talked to a dad whose son was 4 when mom died, and he's now 8, and he's really struggling in school. Well, probably too, the global pandemic's not helping that. And just really validating for him, you are doing a good job. You are getting him the help he needs. Just like Saylee, this little boy is in counseling. And I think that's really important for kids too, is when they can have that one-on-one. And I know Saylee can kind of speak to that, how helpful that was for her to be able to process that separate from her family.
Right.
It's great that they honor her dad all together, but sometimes then it feels like it's their grief and not my grief, and to be able to kind of separate that out. We will often send a grief care package that will have lots of resources about, do you want a one-on-one counselor? Here's a list of people we work with that we know work really well with grieving kids. Do you need some of those handouts? How do we talk to them about those things? So we really just make sure we give them all the resources and really let them know we're a support. Call us back. If there's a question they ask, we will help you answer that if you don't know the answer to that. And it's a lot about that validating and really being that support.
Saylee, you found support through Hamilton's and Buffy, and what do you want to tell our listeners out there with the a few minutes that we have remaining in the program?
That if you lose a parent or any loved one, that I feel like memorizing them or remembering them is helps me a lot. It helped me to, feel closer to them, and that it does get easier. It's still very hard, and you're always going to have your days, but grieving in any way you want, with laughing or angry or crying, that's totally okay. We all grieve, differently, and just know that your loved one loved you very much. Yeah.
That's the kicker right there. Yeah. There's so much love involved in living.
Yeah.
And we've got to be prepared to face that, to embrace it.
Yeah.
Because that's part of the experience. And if you miss it, you're missing so very much. Saylee, thank you for joining us. My best to your mother as well. And we hope, that you'll come back. Maybe you would like to have a topic that you would like to hear. And folks, you're the same. If you would like us to cover a topic, please email me address is on the website, Talk Therapy, TMHS.com. That's Talk Therapy, the mental health show. And we'd love to hear from you. But Saylee, stay in touch with us. You're a gracious young lady and just absolutely a joy to talk to you, and I appreciate that.
Yes, well, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Now, don't forget, you can find Saylee part-time in Hamilton's. Yeah, I think that's true. You may have, quite by accident, you may have found a career choice right there. Good job out of you, Saylee. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, there she goes. Saylee Sims, obviously an employee for life now by Hamilton.
Yeah.
She will be going to college on behalf of Hamilton's. And, is there some kind of a like a Pell Grant?
There should be. Interesting you say that. Real quick. So Mr. Hamilton that started Hamilton's Funeral Home, he had a gentleman work for him named Artis Peterson, and he was in high school, had a death in the family, ended up working for Mr. Hamilton. He sent him to college. And so he could come back and be a funeral director, and that's how we're still family owned.
There it is. All right. Well, Saylee Sims was our guest there, but in studio, we've been just absolutely overjoyed to have her back. Buffy Peters, Hamilton's Grief Academy. As we wrap up this show from the Five Talents Financial Management Studios, I want to thank Nick Learhoff for taking the day off so I could go one-on-one with Buffy. That's terrific. But on behalf of Danny Bishop and all of us at Hope 940, thank you for listening to this very special topic as we recognize and observe the National Children's Grief Awareness Month. For all of us, I'm Scott Casper. We'll talk to you next week on Talk Therapy, the mental health show, brought to you by our friends at St. Gregory's.
With Dame. Like, I feel like I've seen a lot of Dame everywhere. Plus, Dame is, during this bubble, I think it was even another level, him averaging close, I feel like, 45 points. I mean, what he was doing there was the talk of the town, literally put that team on his back to get them to the playoffs, was next level. I just feel like Dollar Dame is a huge name in basketball, and people are finding out about him more and more.